Hi. How are you two doing?
Hey, Ron. Hey, Sam.
Hey again, Ron.
Hey, chat.
How's everyone else?
Well, I'm really good.
Yeah.
What
Good.
about you, Ron?
Do we now need to change our name?
To Queens Off the Clock? I don't know.
No, to Queens of Custody.
Oh, yeah.
Is that where we are now?
Custody. Woo, woo.
I don't know where the and Ron fits into that one, but
Well, you're just a queen, Ron. So, you're just officially a queen.
I've got a crown somewhere. So, yeah. Well, let's get started. We got a bunch of people in here. And got to say, about 2 hours ago, we totally changed up what we were going to do today, huh?
Yeah, one of our team members sent us the video, and we get so many messages. I kind of just scrolled by, and then I was like, you know what, let me go look. And I was blowing up Ron and Sam because anytime I get to hear Dr. Turvey talk is a good day, in my opinion. And we have so much respect for him, and anyone that thinks otherwise, that's their opinion and they're entitled to it. But we work with experts a lot, and he is definitely at the top of the professional, meter. So when I saw him, and then I was listening, and I was like, tell him, Dr. Turvey, tell him. And it was very nice to see that he had given us just a little bit of a recognition. Not that we want it, not that we need it, but it was nice for the three of us to say, you know what, we're on the right side of this. And it's not always easy. And everyone else in the chat, you guys know it's not always easy. And it was really cool to be part of that today.
Yeah. Absolutely. And before we get started, just a reminder to everyone, this is our opinions. We are not making any accusations. Please make sure you verify your own facts. And although we just saw it, I'm excited to go ahead and get started. So Ron, why don't you take it from here?
All right. This is Dr. Turvey on with Donna Rotuno. Is it Rotuno?
Rotuno. Rotuno? I think it's Rotuno, but don't ask me.
I know we've seen her. He was on with her before a number of months ago. And she's one I know. I don't follow a lot of the talking heads on TV. I mostly watch streaming and YouTube. But she's one that I think has been pretty even-handed with this. At least one of the few that seems willing to look at things from Brian's perspective. And she is a criminal defense attorney.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In fact, I noted that she mentioned during this interview that she just, I think yesterday, was handling a jury trial. So she's an active.
Yes.
So this is awesome. I hope, wouldn't it be great if someday we can talk to her and kind of compare notes and stuff? But this was a great interview. Let's get started.
Yeah, and really quick, she also interviewed Chris Whitcomb as well before Dr. Turvey. And I remember talking to him after, and he kind of went through the gauntlet of interviews from YouTube to mainstream media, and not many of them on mainstream were very nice or even professional with him, so to speak. And I remember him saying that she was fair, and I can always respect that.
Yeah, what more can you ask for? All right, let's start.
Well, there's a number of ways that I reacted to it, but my first initial reaction as a person, as somebody who works in the justice system and observes it, was relief. I was relieved, mainly because.
Okay, I started it too late for some reason.
I was just going to say, that's not the beginning, Ron.
He's talking about the PCR petition that Brian filed.
Okay, can we say thank you really quick, Sam, to our super sticker? Tammy Lynn, thank you so much for the $49. We greatly appreciate it. And what we do with any of the donations, we actually use it to put it right back into the podcast and the algorithm to get in front of more people. So Tammy Lynn, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tammy.
Yeah, that's only her fourth one in this chat so far.
Well,
So
thank you,
thank you.
Tammy. She's giving us more and more. All right, Tammy. Thank you, Tammy.
All right. So the question was about, and I apologize for that, but the question was, talk to me about how you felt when you heard that Mr. Koberger had filed this petition to withdraw his plea and what your reaction was when you first heard that news.
How you felt when you heard that Mr. Koberger had filed this petition to withdraw his plea, and what was your reaction when you first heard that news?
Well, there's a number of ways that I reacted to it, but my first initial reaction as a person, as somebody who works in the justice system and observes it, was relief. I was relieved, mainly because of the way of what he said in his filing. It was some important facts and details came out that really haven't been covered at all. I mean, I want to take a moment to talk to you like a person, like you're a human being. I'm a human, you're a human. We both have human emotions and have human responses to these things. And it's been, the word I would use is disgusting. It's been disgusting the way that most of the topics around this case have been talked about and shared and even ruminated and theorized over. And I'm grateful to be in this space with you because I know you're not like that. You're more of a facts and law, and that's how I prefer to meet this case, because it's more productive that way. So really great relief.
For sure.
Primarily because so many things happen in that plea that people have only speculated about and continue to speculate about. And the first one is that no one seems to be saying out loud, which is that Ann Taylor and her legal team were fired. They were just fired across the board. There's no getting away from that, what happened there.
When you say fired, you mean that when he filed his petition, he did it on his own. So therefore, he obviously didn't ask them to do it. And then he asked for other counsel to be appointed to him. So is that what you're referring to when you say fired?
I don't know.
You know, I'm really glad that she's doing this interview, because she is a criminal defense attorney, an active criminal defense attorney. And I love that perspective. I know we have our expertise and our legal knowledge in general, but this is, I really like to see somebody interviewing him about this from, who is an active criminal defense attorney and knows all this stuff.
Me too.
And what does anything in particular strike either of you about Dr. Turvey and what he's saying so far? I know that this is something he's doing this. I don't know that how this interview came about, but he clearly feels like some things need to be put on the record.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Ron, can you turn up the video really quick? We have comments that it could be turned up a bit if you can.
Yes, I maxed out the volume now.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Let's keep going.
Well, and I think that's a great with laying the foundation, almost like if someone was testifying, because I can't tell you how many times I've seen comments. Well, we don't know if he fired her, he just filed that petition. If you file a petition or other documents, like in family law, like on the civil side, if an attorney's trying to get off the case, we would file a motion to be relieved because there's a breakdown in the attorney-client relationship. There's also a substitution of attorney. But when you go on the record and you make such severe allegations and use words like coercion, you are very blatantly firing your attorney. And so for anyone that is still wondering if Ann is still on the case, that's a hard no.
Right.
Yeah, and it's very clear she didn't file the petition. And that's very telling itself too, I think.
Yeah, I'm wondering at what point she knew that was coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, I think it's an important point. I also really like that Dr. Turvey is doing these type of interviews, because with everything going on, I think it is important for people to see the other side. And he has such credibility, I think, candidly, on both sides, just from his professional stance. So I think that it's great.
Yeah, and unlike another expert that has had some commentary on this case. He has actually done work for both the prosecution and the defense. So we don't necessarily have a one-sided expert with Dr. Turvey.
I wonder if we're going to talk about that other expert later on here.
We shall see. No names.
One thing is if you were just to go by sheer weight of number of interviews and shows and everything that's discussions that are out there in the media, it would be like this with the so much in favor of the prosecution or from the prosecution's point of view versus, people who are willing to look at it a different way. And so this is especially nice to see.
Ron, there's a question for you.
Do you think she tried to appeal to hide her spending because BK was going to file his petition? I think you've got two parts to that question. I don't know that it was specifically because he was going to file his petition or not. It doesn't seem to me like there was any intent by her for him to do that. Now, to hide her spending, well, that's what she's appealing is as I understand it, is
Her billing entries.
Yeah, her billing. So why is she appealing to hide that? To keep that hidden? I think we can all speculate. I think we can all make inferences, but I don't know that we know that yet.
But if those billing records get unsealed, I am really looking forward to those billing records. I don't know. I think people don't realize how much is in billing records. We enter our time all day, every phone call, every review of an email, and you have to put enough in there that if someone is auditing your billing, that they know what you were doing, when you were doing it, who you were doing it with, how long you were spending. And usually you go in 6-minute increments. So if I'm looking at an email, it's going to say review email from opposing counsel regarding X, Y, and Z. And then if I did anything else. So it's almost like those billing entries are almost somewhat of a timeline that I think we're going to get to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's going to be really interesting, especially in light of some of the stuff that Turvey's going to talk about here. All right.
How we can see it any other way. That's the other problem we have with this.
No, I agree. That's just what I'm. No, that's what I'm asking. I agree with that. I just want to be clear so people understand. Yeah,
exactly. For those of us who work these kinds of cases, I do investigative cases for law enforcement. I do cases for prosecutors, and I also do cases for defense attorneys and civil attorneys. And then I also do post-conviction cases, quite a few of them, to review things done after the conviction has already occurred. And I think it's just interesting how people are tripping over themselves to try to describe this in another way, to try to give some leeway to what's happening or create some sort of intrigue or mystery about it. Koberger laid it out pretty clearly what the issues were. And that's so my sense is relief that he is actually able to speak for himself as opposed to being suppressed by Ann Taylor. Ann Taylor no longer holds the privilege. The privilege is his, and he gets to decide what he wants to say. And that has not been true since the plea. And that's the other thing. If you want, we can go right into what the plea is and what he claims if you want. But so my first reaction was relief, and now it seems like the real work might actually get done. Those are my sentiments.
Well, and before I definitely want to get into.
So that's really some really interesting things he said there, huh? Did anything stick out to either of you?
Yeah, about the holder of the privilege, because that's, Anne doesn't hold that anymore. And I think that that's going to be very important of what he waives, what he doesn't waive. That privilege is one of the highest privileges that you can have in any, professional relationship.
Yeah. Also, it's interesting the words he chose. He says Brian can now speak for himself rather than being suppressed by Ann Taylor. And he also says the real work might actually get done by now. What do you guys think of that?
I say let's go.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty strong statement, but I also think that, Brian's affidavit is sort of in line with the concern that a lot of us have had with access to information and really what happened regarding the plea. I know we had probably a couple of episodes where we were talking about how sometimes innocent people do take pleas and why. And I do think that this provides a deeper explanation that for me is more in line with the concerns that I think a lot of us have had.
Yeah, I think he says a third of people accused of a crime will take a plea deal even if they're innocent. I think that's the stat that he quotes at some point in this interview, which is a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, you would hope that your attorney is advocating for your position and that you're making meaningful decisions for your case, and then your attorney is an extension of that. But one way to know for sure what you believe is for a small period of time to be self-represented and file it on your own.
I agree, Sam.
It says a lot, I think, that a defense retained expert seems happy now that the defense lawyer is gone from the case. That is an insane statement, I think.
Where do you
sorry, I didn't catch that.
Where do you get that idea? Being sarcastic.
Now the real work can be done. He's gone way beyond his role as a defense expert here. And I think appropriately. I think sometimes the experts will overstep. We've seen some of that. But he is privy to a lot of stuff that went on the inside of the defense team. And this is highly, highly, highly unusual for an expert to do something like this. So I think he feels something is really, really wrong here within this defense team, that he's willing to essentially stake his professional reputation on this. And we've seen his reputation take some hits, or people try to impugn it. So yeah, this is huge. I remember, Kristen, when you were texting me about this was insane, this interview. And boy, it gets better, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I give so much respect to Dr. Turvey, because he could have washed his hands with the case and he could have been done and he could have moved on. Same with Chris Whitcomb. I know a lot of people want to focus on, the couple of facts that he might have mixed up in the book. But at the end of the day, my opinion is that we are here where we're at right now because of people like Chris Whitcomb. He brought this case back to life when it had been stagnant, and we're all sitting here going, hey, this isn't right. The evidence doesn't add up. And people want to focus on the couple things that they don't like personally or professionally about that person, or they got a couple things wrong. I mean, it was almost a 500-page book. And, I'm sure there's things that he didn't see or he didn't get. But followed by Chris, we had Dr. Turvey come out and speak. And I don't know that people realize, had those people not come out and spoke on a platform like this and done some of these interviews, would Brian ever have found out that the hair was as big of an issue as it is, or the chain of custody on the sheath, or were there any other broken chain of custodies on evidence items? Because I think there potentially probably was. But without them coming out, I don't know where we would be. And would those dates or those statutes have lapsed? I don't know. What do you think, Sam?
I think it's a really good point, and I think everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and a lot of people have done a whole lot of research. But I think, to your point, Kristen, whenever anyone comes out and is analyzing potentially a different side to this case than what the media has been really portraying all this time, I think that is an important add value, even if you disagree at certain turns. I mean, it really is important to be able to look at the evidence, and on such a wide sort of platform as writing a book. I mean, it doesn't mean you have to agree with a book or the book in general, but just the fact that it's out there is important, because it starts to drive the discussion in the other potential way. And then when you have someone like Dr. Turvey, who is such an experienced and reputable expert, it's hard to look the other way. And I think that the easy suggestion is that everyone out there is conspiracy theorists and we all don't know what we're doing. But I really think it's important to kind of focus back on the fact that it's important that people are asking questions about how things have been portrayed. And so if you're asking a question, even if maybe it's the wrong one sometimes, or maybe you don't have the same fact or information, I do think it's still an important narrative.
Yeah. And Kristen, you brought up so, or at least made me think of some of the criticisms I've seen of Chris Whitcomb for writing the book and his motivations. Let me just tell you, and I want to mention this because I have written a book. And what I can tell you is nobody who writes a book does it just for the money. I spent a year worth of weekends and holidays working on a book that actually hasn't really earned a lot of money yet. Anyway, but you don't write a book just for money. You write a book because you have something to say, and you have something that you think is important. You know, Chris was already, he was just starting his process. He was there for the trial. He wanted to write about the trial. It goes away, the plea happens, and it leaves a big void there. He very easily could have said, let me move on to my next thing.
Mhm.
You know, I've not seen his tax returns, but I suspect that he doesn't need the money that this book brought.
I can confirm that, Ron. I can confirm that. Not that I've seen his tax returns, but you know, we've talked, and I mean, his life is fascinating. I don't even know how one person could have accomplished all of that in one lifetime or half of a lifetime. But yeah, I think all three of us can say he didn't do it for the money.
Yeah. Oh, and I see the comments, people. Motherfunker wrote it with me, so you guys can ask.
Woo woo, motherfunker. But yeah, and we don't want to go on a tangent all about Chris. It's just it's somewhat disturbing when I see things on YouTube and we have, you know, people just wanting to trash others or, you know, speak negatively. At the end of the day, anyone that is bringing light to this side of the case is important. And so if you don't like it, scroll on. You know, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I just don't understand why we can't just respect what the person is saying, maybe have some sort of difference of opinion and then move on, because at the end of the day, we are all looking for the same thing, and that's truth and justice.
Isn't there also I don't know the exact verbiage, but didn't Brian possibly reference the broken plea? I mean, we don't know if it was for sure the reference, but it seems like a pretty decent coincidence if not. So I do think it's important. Who knows exactly how Brian got that information, but I think that's worth mentioning too.
And
well, however they did, I you know what, I hope that we're all responsible for that, and they keep watching all of us.
Yeah. And I also want to bring this back around to Dr. Turvey. What Dr. Turvey is doing right now with the limited interviews he's given and these things that he's doing, he's not getting extra pay or anything for this. And he is putting his reputation on the line. Okay. You don't do that if you don't really believe in what you have to say. I don't think. And I can say now, having had multiple conversations with Dr. Turvey, that he is not a deceptive person. He is very, very straightforward. And I really appreciate when we are able to talk with him, how straightforward he is. And I like that. And so, you know, I take him at his word for all this. He's really telling us things that he has serious concerns about.
Yeah, he's actually telling us descriptions and facts versus making blanket statements that really don't have any evidence to support it either way. But yeah, no, Dr. Turvey, I think he actually says in this interview, we'll hear it, that he took a $25,000 retainer for this case. And in law, that is not much at all. No. For this type of case, for the amount of energy, effort, hours, stress, anxiety, that really is very, very, very little. And I know to some people that probably sounds a little harsh, but I can tell you for, you know, a trial that was likely going to last months, I mean, that would be in the hundreds of thousands of range. And he actually does say that in his interview. When he takes cases for the prosecution, they are $100,000 to $200,000 retainers. So again, another thing to keep in mind, he is still following this case. He is still helping and working with, on some level, the family, and to some extent Brian. I think he's passed them on from what he could do. He says in this interview that they need legal assistance at this point, but he is doing that off of a very small retainer that was probably exhausted well over a year ago.
Yep. Let me see. All right. Should we move on?
Yep.
Okay.
The plea. But before we do that, let me ask you this. So, for the regular person who has no exposure to the criminal justice system, who hasn't sat in courtrooms the way you have or I have, we watch Brian Koberger sit in a court, right? And we watch the judge ask Brian Koberger a series of questions that he responded to. And we also saw that Brian Koberger filled out a piece of paper that basically, said, I am pleading guilty of my own free will. And, I'm satisfied with my counsel. So talk to me a little bit about how now, he's going to say, I want to withdraw all of this. And let's kind of go through that in terms of the plea. And, because to me, Brian Koberger does not seem like a dumb guy, right? Like, we're seeing his filings, we're seeing what he's written. And I'm kind of wondering how we reconcile this idea that he is an intelligent person. He was college educated. He was a teacher. He was a teacher's assistant. He was taking classes. And now, now we're hearing that he has written things to the court that are intelligent. So talk to me about how we reconcile this idea that he got up before a court, said all these things, and now he's saying, wait, this wasn't right. Like, why did he wait until now to bring those things up rather than say, I'm not going to plead guilty in the first place?
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm going to just pause it there because I think there's a very important thing that she's doing here. You notice how all that about he said he was doing it knowingly, voluntarily. He meant to do this. She's using that not as a conclusion to shut down a discussion like many other people seem to be doing. She's using that as the platform from which to start this discussion. And I think we're going to go into a really good discussion about that. That's how much your personal bias or viewpoint can affect these sorts of interviews. In so many other interviews that I've seen and YouTubes, I've seen they use that as the conclusion to stifle the discussion. But he did this, boom. And so I love what she's doing now. Let's discuss this now. And it's now the starting point. So I'm sorry. I'm kind of a nerd about things like that.
No, I agree. I think it's a great point, and I think it is important to remember the facts or conclusions that are being said that have an evidentiary basis for them and those that don't. And sometimes maybe no one disputes whether something is voluntary or not. In this case, it's really, really one of the most important, if not the most important issues, especially when you're talking about the plea. So I think it is important to conservatively move forward when you're looking at whether or not somebody actually entered into that document. Just having those words there, it really doesn't mean much. I mean, we use it as attorneys in contracts. We want that verbiage in there, but that verbiage in there is really often a highly litigated area of law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I just have so much respect for how she's already conducting this interview. So different from what we see on other.
From Nancy Grace?
I'm not naming names. The only name I'm going to name is Donna Rotuno, if I can even say it
From
right.
the other 99% of mainstream?
Yeah. Yeah. So key difference in how she's approaching this. So let's get his answer now.
I'll just say is this: anybody who's questioning this process has obviously never been a criminal defendant charged with murder, and certainly not charged with capital murder. So second guessing this is kind of, it's one of those things that I find really unpalatable, because I've done this. I've worked probably 25, 30 death penalty cases in my career and testified in many of them. And what attorneys tell clients to do is shut up, don't make a face, don't respond, don't react, and above all, don't talk. Look straight ahead or take notes. That's the instruction given to every client, every defense client.
And in federal law.
All right.
And so
Whether or not they take that advice is
That is a
something
true
else.
statement.
So from the perspective of Ann Taylor, from her legal team, he's a good client, doing what he's told, trying to maintain that stoicism, which cannot be judged. Because as you can see from this case, as I said at the outset of this interview, the response of the public has really been our worst selves. We've been our worst selves in responding to this, smacking our chops over the deaths of these young girls, making light, making jokes, making fake AI videos to purport a side or the other. It's been very grotesque. It's been a menagerie of the grotesque, in my opinion. He has been a good client. He has been doing what he's told. He has not been talking, as he's been told. He's been letting Ann Taylor and her legal team talk for him. And as you and I both know, up until the weekend before the plea, it was all, I'm innocent. I want to take this to trial. I want to take this to court. Now, the question is, why would he then get up there? Well, first of all, he didn't allocute. That's the first thing. The second thing, and it's clear from his filing, is he was told two things. One, you need to confess or to get a plea to take the death penalty off the table. That's what he was told by his attorneys. Bad advice across the board, but that was the advice he was given.
That's an interesting statement by him. Bad advice to take the plea. That's kind of the question that we've had, hasn't it been? That we go along. Why did he take the plea?
I would say that almost 945 people in here right now have probably had that same question. And I know that I've even gone back and forth with my internal, like, okay, I could see why he took the plea. He was stacked against the wall. Everything was against him. And then I go, why did he take the plea? And even I go back and forth. But Turvey is very, very, very strong about the fact that he should not have taken the plea.
No. Yep. All right.
Then the second thing that he was told, according to his filing, was that it's okay to lie about whether or not you did it, because that will set legal things in motion. And then we will start to do appeals and we'll start to do other things around that. But
have either of you ever advised a client to lie to the court?
No, and we can't. Have you?
I don't. I have not, and I don't mind asking you because I know the answer already.
Right.
No. Divert.
You know, you do not ever tell a client to lie to the court. Never.
You cannot.
You can't.
It's not even just do
we
not.
cannot.
You cannot. Yeah, you cannot do that.
And how many times have the three of us, when a client comes to us and says, oh, I have this offshore account in the Cayman Islands that my wife doesn't know about, and I'm just not going to disclose it. Okay. And this is not a real case. It's just fictional. But in 17 years, we've heard it a lot. But how many times have you guys heard that? And our response is always, you cannot lie. You cannot commit perjury. You cannot have me perpetuate a fraud on the court. And if you don't disclose it, it will get found out by an expert, generally an accountant or forensic accountant, and they will award that entire asset to your wife.
Yeah, I remember as a new young family law attorney, I was talking to a client, and client said just that thing. Actually, it was I have an offshore account. I want to disclose it, and so I went to the partner in my prior firm, and said, hey, here's what should I tell him? He said, well, tell him if he doesn't disclose it, then we can't represent him anymore. And that really drilled it into my head that, how important that is. I cannot think of any scenario where any attorney is justified in telling a client to lie to the court about anything.
Great. Face the music, but you don't lie.
Yeah, and I tell clients all the time when they're facing depositions and stuff, just tell the truth. Whatever the truth is, we'll deal with it. We'll have to deal with it. It may hurt, but we'll deal with what the truth is. But that's always my overarching instruction. Just answer honestly, and whatever you say, we'll have to deal with it.
Yeah, your credibility is everything with respect to the law.
Yeah. So I don't want anyone, that's something where I feel very strongly about. There is no scenario where any attorney in this country is justified in telling a client to lie to the court.
Do either one of you know the answer to this? I think I know the answer, but I'm not positive.
To what?
Oh,
Turvey
that's on the
is
screen.
True rock stars? Yeah, they are.
Oh, sorry. I got rid of the other one. It was about the Innocence Project. Sorry, and I probably can't even find it. You know, blonde hair is real, guys. Sorry. It said that it was their understanding. Oh, here it is right here. And I think, Deidre, I think you are right on that. I am not 100%, but that is my understanding.
Ron, do you know the answer?
That is my understanding based on what Dr. Turvey said. I haven't dealt with the Innocence Project a lot, and I do understand. I think I heard or saw somewhere as well from another source related to this case that it's not in a position where Innocence Project can yet get involved. So that sounds right to me.
Yeah, they might be able to give referrals or recommendations to other people, but I do believe that statement is correct. Sam, do you believe the same, or do you have any other information?
My guess is, because I know that it's the same for your federal habeas corpus relief, is you can't deal with you can't pursue that until all of your state avenues are exhausted. So if Innocence Project, they probably are, because they are a national type organization, or at least have chapters or whatever all over the country. It does appear they probably deal primarily with constitutional issues, and which are federal, and you have to exhaust all your state options before pursuing those. So that's my guess, based on some very credible statements by Dr. Turvey. And I agree, Deirdre. Dr. Turvey is very authentic, and we deal with experts, both in our cases on the other side all the time, and we have various opinions regarding them. And I think Dr. Turvey has struck all of us as particularly straightforward, intelligent. When I talk to Dr. Turvey, it's like when I'm talking to you two, is I know I'm talking to someone smarter than me, and I have to be on my toes.
Well, we feel the same way about you, Ron.
Do you have to stay on your toes?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Hey, Ireland in the house.
Yes, thank you, DJ Frankie. That's awesome. Awesome. We're super excited to have you. Thank you for the donation. And then I'll let one of you answer his question.
Hey, Custody Queens and Ron. Firstly, greetings from Ireland. At the plea hearing, BK obviously has to say yes to all of the questions. If the judge had asked him if night was day, he'd have to say yes.
True, but sort of. I mean, for the plea to be valid, yeah, he would have to do that.
Yeah, if he would have said no to any of those things, the plea deal would have been off the table.
But
same when Anne 2 weeks before said that she couldn't go to trial because she was still missing discovery, and then the day of, she claimed to have everything, and that plea deal would not have gone through had either of them said no to any of that.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point to bring up, though, that in so many people saying, well, he said yes, 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 that somehow means that really there's no possibility that he could have been saying it for a different reason. And as he is not only suggesting, but now overtly saying, he did say yes for a different reason. That's his position, because he was told to.
Mm-hmm. And if he didn't see all the exculpatory evidence, at some point, I think we're going to hear in this interview that they had to bring in his family to potentially convince him to take the plea because Ann Taylor couldn't get Brian to take it. But if they didn't even know what evidence existed that was positive for him, it would have been potentially easier for him to come to terms with taking the plea. I don't know, just speculation.
Yeah. Really pushing him being autistic. You know, I don't know the extent of any mental issues that he may or may not have. He is very intelligent, and I saw that. And don't look at the handwriting on that. I know some really smart people who can't write. You know, I can't understand their writing. That was a very, especially for a layperson, that was very well written. His petition. He clearly understood the things that he needed to put in there to implicate the statute and to support the relief he was seeking. And if you line up what he said with what the statute allows, or the grounds that you can obtain the relief, there's so many, just about all the boxes are ticked. So Brian is very intelligent. He's a PhD student. You don't become a PhD student by not being intelligent. On the other hand, intelligent people who are dealing with very unfamiliar circumstances, such as a criminal trial, have to rely on who they believe other intelligent people are. So he relied a lot on his attorney. And if his attorney is telling him to lie, then he, may find a way to justify lying about the guilty plea. If they're telling him this is what you have to do, this is how it has to be, then you do that. But he's very smart in many ways, just like you two are very smart in many ways as well. But that doesn't mean if you get get in a situation you're unfamiliar with, you may just not know what to do.
Mm-hmm. Very true. And the amount of people that wanted to comment on the legal issue of setting aside the plea based on his handwriting absolutely blew me away. I think that is such, and I'm probably going to get attacked for saying this, but to judge someone that is challenging in a post-conviction relief motion, who is saying, I will face the death penalty. That's my best case scenario, but that's what I am asking for, based on their handwriting, is so ignorant. Like, it really got me, because my handwriting depends on my mood, depends on where I'm writing it. I've written stipulations in my car, in between, a break at the court, or if I have time to write out a really pretty handwriting. But to judge a defendant on a legal issue wherein he is asking to face the death penalty based on his handwriting, that is just, that's really ignorant.
I've seen some really stupid things written in really pretty handwriting.
Very true, Ron.
There is no correlation between somebody's intelligence and the quality of their handwriting. Zero at all.
Very true.
All right. Do we want to keep going?
Yep.
All right. So we can get that.
This will give us time. This is a time-saving device. That's what's heavily implied in his filing. So why would he do it? One, because he was told to. And then two, he was told it would not be of legal significance. Now, whether or not you and I would have believed that, if I had been in the room in that conversation, I would have said, what the f are you talking about? You don't tell people to suborn perjury, knock that off right now. That's what I would have done. But I wasn't in the room.
I believe that.
I have no, and I happen to know now who was in the room, and I know exactly what was said. And
that is really important. Isn't it?
And I don't think he knew that 6 months ago, Ron. I don't think he knew that when we first talked to him.
He may not have. But what that strongly implies there is there are others in the room who will be witnesses at this proceeding and who may corroborate what Brian seems to be stating.
Yeah,
So-
which
Yeah,
I
and I
think
think
strengthens his total claim, because it's not just a he said, she said. Now there's other people that have witnessed that event. So
Yeah.
and that's
or
outside of his
series of
family
events.
as well. Those are not family members, which obviously there's a presumption of, you know, when a family member is testifying on behalf of the defendant, there might be a presumption there. But I believe that there were a handful of non-family members in that room.
Mhm.
I think he later says that the entire defense team, for the most part, or at least the attorneys, that's who he infers. Does one of you want to answer this question really quick?
She did not advise him to lie. She advised him to take the plea. That is two totally different things. That to me suggests that you know exactly what was said. And I don't know that we 100% know that. I mean, what is being alleged is that she advised him to lie. So I think you're just kind of taking a jump there. I mean, fair enough that at this point, none of us were all in that room. No, none of us up on stage, and no one, to my knowledge, that's in the comments was actually in the room. So fair enough that we don't have that position, but to just decide that to say that just because someone took the plea means that they were telling them to lie, I think those are two very different allegations. Telling someone to take the plea and telling them to lie, to me, are two independent things. If somebody is telling you to lie and to also take the plea, I think those are different. What are your thoughts?
And to add on to that, what are you doing if you're telling someone to take a plea? And whether or not Ann Taylor knew, we know that she was, a believer through and through. But if I'm telling my client to take a plea for something that he did not do, and he has been very honest about, that he did not do this, then I am in essence telling him to lie. And that's what that a lot of people might not catch that second part of it.
Right. And aren't there two different sets of concerns? So there's the concern of, did you advise him to lie? And then there's additionally, is there the concern of, did you advise him to take the plea without providing him with the exculpatory evidence, allegedly, including the hair, and the other issues that somebody would need in order to meaningfully understand what the case looked like, what the potential was for trial, what the options were, and whether or not the plea was in fact in his best interest based on the circumstances.
There's potentially some subtle differences here in when you're dealing with taking a plea where you have to admit guilt. I know a lot of defense attorneys will say they don't want to know, whether their client's guilty or not. I think that's probably a good approach because that leaves your options open. You can advise your client, this is the only way we're going to get a plea, is if you plead guilty, you tell the judge that you did it, you comply with whatever terms there are. It's a different thing to say if the client says, but I didn't do it, and you say, well, you've just got to lie then. That's a whole different thing. And it depends on what the discussions were, like you were saying.
Yeah, and the role of the attorney is to put all of the cards on the table, because I always tell my clients, this isn't my life, this is your life, right? You're the captain of the ship. I'm giving you all the information so that you can make an informed decision, because at the end of the day, it's not Ann's life, it's BK's life. But you are to give all of the information. You can talk about the consequences. You can talk about the pros of not being on death row versus being, in a different prison. You can talk about all those things, but an attorney should never, ever try to sway someone one way or the other, especially if she knows that that person is holding strong that they are innocent. You should never coerce a client to make a decision one way or the other, because at the end of the day, you're not the one sitting in that cell, or you're not the one walking free. That is the client. And I think it happens more often than not, but that's just, I don't know how I wouldn't even be able to sleep at night if I did that. And I barely sleep as it is. So,
I think that's a great segue into this next bit.
It comports with the meeting that Ann Taylor had with us, which caused me to get up and walk out, which is that she basically said, I couldn't get him to take the plea initially. I couldn't get him to do it. So what did I do? I went and I enlisted his family. I told him he had to do it. I gave him a horror show of what death row was going to be like. I told him what it was going to be like if he was, just in there as a regular inmate, not on death row. And it took more than a day and a half, maybe 2 days, to get the family to convince him to take the plea. So why did he do it? I mean, in my head, I've seen this kind of scenario play out before, but only with extremely unethical attorneys who don't want to go to trial.
Wow.
That is a punch right there. But I think that's what we've been saying for the last few months, is that something happened and she didn't want to go to trial.
Yeah, I mean, he's flat out saying, I've only seen this with unethical attorneys. For some reason, Ann Taylor didn't want to go to trial. That's what I don't know if we've discussed that expressly on this channel. I know we've discussed it behind the scenes as well. But this really does strike me as she, for some reason, she didn't want to go to trial. And it looks like Brian did.
What's troubling to me is that it sounds like there's a juncture where the decision was absolutely no. Okay, well, let's try to get him to take it again, assuming those allegations are true. That's very troubling to me, that you are sort of trying to convince someone to do something that is ultimately their decision. And I think that's the whole basis for being allowed to potentially have a remedy to set aside the plea. Like, that's why there is that remedy, because it's your decision. And so if you aren't in a position to meaningfully make that decision, or you're put in a position where you are essentially up against a wall, I don't know how you are knowingly and intelligently entering into a plea with all of the facts and without undue pressure.
Yeah, when I heard the 18 hours and what they were telling him, I mean, in essence, they were trying to scare the shit out of him so that he would consider or ultimately change his plea. But when I heard the 18 hours, it really got me. I just think there are so many problems with the way this entire thing has been handled. And we know that, he was described to what it looked like to be in a death penalty prison, and what that looked like day to day, because we know some of the defense team members went down there and shared that. And I'm actually kind of just disgusted the way that whole 18 hours went down. It's like they were asking everyone else to make the decision for him.
And I think everybody agrees that it's a really serious decision, but it's also his decision, one way or the other. It's no one else's decision as to whether or not he is going to elect to move forward with trial or take the plea. So when you're hearing these troubling facts that maybe he wasn't in a position to know all the facts, and maybe he was in a position where he was being pressured to accept terms that he didn't initially think were fair to him, it's a red flag, and it's the reason why that relief exists.
And Ron, why do you think they had a psychologist in the room for that 18 hours? So that they could cover their tracks in the event that he did change the plea, and they could say, hey, he was of sound mind, he was good, I was monitoring it. I want to know more about that. I can tell you that.
It could be that, or to try to help manipulate him. I mean, can either of you, we negotiate deals all the time in our family law. And it is always better, usually better to have an agreed upon judgment. But could you imagine working on a client for 2 days to try to pressure them to take a deal that they didn't want to take?
Heck no.
No.
That is not just, bad practice. I agree. It's unethical, because you're trying to push what we tell. Our role is to give them information, and the strongest that I will get is, if we go to trial, here's what we might expect. Here's what it's going to cost. Here's the range of things that might happen. If we take this deal, here's what you might save. Here's what you're giving up. Here's what they're giving up. But whether or not to take the deal, that's up to you. And I have clients get frustrated with me. Well, what should I do? I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to tell you what the options are. I'm going to tell you what the consequences might be, but I can't put myself in your shoes and tell you, you need to take this deal.
Exactly.
And I've had clients tell me, I want to, I can remember clients who maybe the divorce, they feel some level of guilt for the divorce. And so they want to give their spouse more. And I tell them, yeah, you can get better than this at trial. But I'm not going to tell you don't give the deal. I'll tell you, yeah, I think it's very unfair, but I cannot really say for them what the cost of peace of mind is. And just like a defense lawyer cannot really understand for their client what the cost of facing the death penalty is versus life in prison versus potentially being exonerated. So this is highly, highly disturbing to me how this came about and how much pressure seems to have been put on him. And I know that with our prior conversations with Dr. Turvey before, he's kind of alluded to things like that. And we've kind of gotten the impression there was some pressure, but I didn't imagine it was this much pressure.
Yeah, he's held that very close to the vest. There's one comment that I love here, so I just need to put it up really quick. Sorry, Ron, this doesn't really apply to you because you don't cuss very much. But Turkey Creek Gal, yes, we love you. And that means that Sam and I are absolutely brilliant.
Kristen's Einstein.
I have the worst potty mouth. I try to be pretty good on here, but
I don't know that I hear it I don't know that it even registers to me.
Because I think you say it almost equally as much.
I feel like I say it far more than you.
It's like the F. It's just the word. But like the F word. It makes my point. But my dad is a pretty well-known attorney as well. I worked with him off and on for.
And sailor.
Well, yeah, I have a brother that's an attorney too. Lots of attorneys in my family. Too many.
No, I said and sailor.
Oh, and sailor. Yes. Yeah. Imagine our Thanksgiving dinners when a little too much lines had, and then you throw in politics and you got 3 attorneys. Holy cow. But my dad cusses so much. And I remember, doing the whole quarter in the jar thing. I think I literally earned like $30 in a week. And this was probably 25 years ago. And then he told me, we are effing stopping this. He just couldn't control it, And then I think you go to law school and 99% of people use the F word like it's just because everybody's so stressed out all the time. But I laughed at your comment, Turkey Greek Gal. Thank you for the smile. And Ron, you should really cuss more. Just kidding.
I'll take that under advisement.
We finally got Ron to drink a margarita about a decade ago. So, we're making progress.
Yeah. All right. There was another comment up there.
Oh, you'll have to find it. I am so not good at this comment thing.
Oh, well, if we find that,
let's get back to the interview.
Yeah, let's go back.
For whatever reason.
I'm wondering why you wouldn't want to go to trial. Like, this was not a financial situation, right? The Kobergers were not paying for his legal defense. The taxpayers of the state of Idaho were paying, so their bills were being paid. They work for a public defender's office, which obviously they are paid. So, and this is not a case where, I don't know, I think the majority of the public were expecting anybody to win. So I guess my question is, what do you really have to lose? And yeah, okay, the death penalty is one area of conversation, right? We can talk about the death penalty, but I know, and hopefully Brian Koberger understood that just because the state asks for the death penalty doesn't mean if you lose at trial, they're going to impose it on you, right? That is something that a jury decides after the fact, and you can present mitigating evidence and things of that nature, and your mother can get up and talk about how awful it would be to know that her son is being put to death. And so there are ways to fight against the death penalty. So that was not a foregone conclusion if he were to go to trial and lose. So I guess I'm wondering, like, what do you think? I've always said as a lawyer, I will try anything, right? I am not in the business of trying to convince clients to take pleas. I, of course, have conversations with clients when offers are made to them, because that is our ethical obligation to do so. We must convey any offers made to clients. But in 26 years of doing this, I have never twisted anybody's arm. And I say to them, you live with the consequence of your decision. You want me to go in there and fight for you? I'll fight for you. So what do you think, what do you think they had to lose here by going to trial? I mean, they fought pretty hard throughout the pendency of the case. They obviously hired experts to try to put them in a position that was better at trial. So I'm just wondering, like, what do you think it was ultimately that she just didn't want to fight? Because frankly, the fight that was going on, as long as it was a fight. The trial aspect of it isn't really that difficult once you're prepared. So I'm just wondering what you think happened here.
I have some.
I just think it's great. And I love seeing someone who is an acting, practicing criminal defense attorney say essentially the same sort of stuff that we've been saying about how we deal with clients. It's not different in a criminal defense trial. And she even acknowledged that she's never tried to convince a client to take a plea. I mean, it's just what we do. We offer the alternatives, and if you want to go to trial, we will fight.
Mm-hmm.
Some speculations, but first let me just say, Donna, I wish you had been there. I wish you had been in the room. I wish you had given that advice. That was not, he was not getting that advice. That's the first thing. So one, he had no advocates for him in that room. He had only people that wanted him to plea out because they didn't want to go to trial.
Wow.
Two, he didn't have all the information about all the exculpatory evidence that we had found. He didn't know that. He didn't know what the defense team had uncovered. And it's not me by myself. None of this stuff, according to his filing and according to other things that I'm aware of, he wasn't provided any of the defense reports. He didn't even know I existed until I went on a podcast.
That's crazy.
Can you imagine that?
Almost
he didn't
3
even know
years
about
in.
her.
Almost 3 years in. That is crazy.
What podcast would that have been?
I think it was
The Queens of Custody. I'm just
the
kidding.
Queens of Custody.
Oh, let's get there.
And I do hope,
And
and
and we know that
Ryan's family is watching all of the creators on this side of the fence.
Mhm.
I really, really do, and I am optimistic they are, because every creator brings something different, a different approach, different information, different perspective, and there are a lot of really, really good ones. And so I think that we've all put something, including everybody in the chats and everybody besides the creators, because it's because of all of you that this stuff is happening. And I think that, I mean, I don't know the family. I haven't talked to the family, but I would say that I believe that they are probably watching, and they are probably grateful for us, if I had to guess.
Mhm. All right.
that because we know that because he told somebody that, or how do we know that? Because if that's the case, that's
well, something that I have not disclosed yet, which I think is important to know. And that is that after I did Queens of Custody and your podcast, the family reached out to me and like, who the hell are you? And what are you doing on this case? And why haven't we heard of all this stuff before? And then I immediately like, okay, well, let's talk. And then I handed them off to people who had legal minds, which I do not. So I was like, sure. I feel your pain. I understand what you're saying. The next step has to be legal steps that I can't be involved in. So you need to go do that. There are things that have to happen that I can't be a part of. And that's what happened. Mm-hmm. So I got told by the family directly that they had not received that stuff.
I mean, that's
the next thing.
That's troubling. That's troubling.
Very troubling. It gets worse. It's way worse than you can possibly imagine.
Wow.
Way worse than I even worried about. I always game out the worst case scenarios, and then I sort of prepare for them, hope for the best, plan for the worst kind of deal. And it's way worse. The family has not spoken yet because they're frightened out of their minds about what's going to happen the next time they speak. The vultures will descend, the legal consequences. They've been told to be quiet for this whole time, and they've also done the same thing. Notice Brian Koberger did not allocute because he couldn't, because he didn't know what happened. His family has not spoken out other than the sister giving one interview. And even that, after that, she's now a little gun shy, but they're trying to talk, but they really don't have the facility to do that. They don't trust anybody, and they shouldn't. But Koberger himself in his filing makes this very real and says, I didn't know any of this stuff. I wasn't being told anything. I wasn't being given good advice. And I was told the opposite of some of the things that are occurring right now. And he is, as any good client does, has held his water this entire time, because the person who speaks for him is Ann Taylor. And in lockup, he had no ability. Well, in lockup, he was even more limited by what he could say and who he could say it to. Now, I'll give you one other piece of information that I learned from the Koberger family. She hasn't spoken to him since the plea. So she's in court representing him without
That's
even
crazy.
That is absolutely insane.
She's filing a response for the appeal to protect her billing records. And we know that she's, somewhat tried to blast Turvey after he spoke out, but she hasn't contacted her client in a year?
And so what that means is she has not discussed with him what potential options he has, what post-conviction relief looks like. For instance, did she get pressured into doing this because she didn't have the discovery? Was she ready for trial? I mean, the fact that she hasn't talked to him since the plea is absolutely insane.
Well, and isn't that congruent with the statements of Brian that he didn't meaningfully understand really what was going on with the exculpatory evidence? So if you really haven't talked to him, I understand that happened before, but I mean, is it that big of a jump? If that was the last time you spoke with him, you haven't talked to him, then you can kind of prove that she hasn't gone through all of the additional items you're bringing up, Ron. Like, is it really that far of a stretch then to believe that he entered into a plea without knowing all of the terms of it?
Yeah, just unbelievable what Dr. Turvey is saying about the communication between Brian and Ann.
Yeah.
We haven't taken the bar exam in a very long time, but I think that was like one of the top 3 obligations of an attorney. It's like to zealously advocate, communicate with your client, and basically be ethical. I would love to see her billing statements from the plea until now. Because how do you effectively or zealously, I want those billing statements so bad, because how do you not talk to your client for a year and you're still working on the case?
Yeah.
You're not making the decisions for your client. You're the one preparing the motions and doing all of the legal work. But how do you work on a case for a year, get paid on it, and your client's over here saying, our clients freak out if we don't talk to them for 3 days, but the fact that she has not talked to her client in a year, that is wild.
Yeah.
And yes, Sam, I do want those billing statements.
All right.
Wow. Can you imagine?
So
that
let me,
scenario? So the questions you're
can't.
asking are really for Ann Kober. Why didn't you share this exculpatory material? And why aren't you talking to your client?
Yeah, I mean, that just makes no sense to me. And when I look at this, and I want to be really clear, so people that are listening or watching
in my little brain, it makes sense to me, but we can speculate as to why.
Sure. Well, and when I look at this, and I want people who are listening or watching to understand, there is a very big difference between the atrocities and the horrific things that happened to these 4 young college students and the court process. And so, everybody out there is talking about how awful this is for the families to have to relive this, and this is coming back. And it is. It's awful. It's awful that it ever happened in the first place. But I think every person of every family member would want to make sure that whoever was put behind bars for this is actually the person who did it. And so, I've always thought
that's generally true, but I want to just speak out on this very issue because it's one of the things that disgusts me the most. I've never seen a family try to sell their daughter's story like this before, ever. Going to Crime Con, trying to get different documentary deals. I'm disgusted by that. I wouldn't even think to do that as an expert, and I have access to everything. I'll talk to you and we'll have a professional conversation, but not for money.
Sure.
And certainly I wouldn't, anybody who's out there trying to sell a story for money, that's grotesque.
And and I'm not going to judge what people do when
Yes.
they're put in the most horrific situations. I mean, obviously we can have personal opinions on it, but in terms of, just being, and again, you have to remember that these are people that are talking to one side, right? They're talking to the prosecutors. They're looking at what the prosecutors are showing them. They're believing, what they hear. But prosecutors sit down with family members prior to pleas and talking about strength of evidence, and they do that in terms of actual facts or physical exhibits or things like that. That might be a little bit different, but
Yeah, prosecutors don't have an attorney-client privilege or attorney-client relationship with the victims and victims' families, and so I fully expect that what the victims' families are getting is a very skewed vision of what the evidence is, which is why we're here, because what has been coming from the prosecution versus what's been coming out in public and being said by people like Dr. Turvey are two very, very different things here.
Yeah, and I don't want to talk about any of the victims' families. We're not in their shoes, but it's hard for me to process that they're talking to Cy Ray. I mean, they've done a couple interviews, and at the end of the day, he was a defense expert, at least at the time of trial. So at what point is it that this is what I believe and this is what I've been told? And I do believe they've been manipulated for years. But at what point is it that, maybe you say, I really want to know the other side of this? And that's hard because, none of us have lost a child. So it's, I don't even want to comment on that. But clearly, Dr. Turvey has a strong position. But when Donna said that he only talks to the prosecution, no, I mean, I would say there's a very new, somewhat close relationship with what used to be a defense expert.
All right.
But I do think that from a practical standpoint, even people who it's very difficult to relive this, I would think that even at some point, your logical brain would take over and you would say, okay, if this really isn't the guy, then we want to make sure that we find the guy. But now let me ask you this question, because here's the practical side of this. This is a very difficult thing to overcome for Bryan Kohberger, right? Taking back a plea, putting yourself in a position to actually have a trial and to be able to plead not guilty. This is a legal burden that is very high. And so I'm wondering where you think this goes next for him. Do you think legally he has enough to go into the court and say, you know what, my lawyer was ineffective and didn't do a good job. And I'm, the legal standard's high. And I'm just wondering because, the courts give a lot of deference to lawyers saying that was strategic. They made a decision. They decided not to do this. Now, it's a little different when you're talking about a plea versus a trial that went bad.
You're absolutely correct. It's a very high and very difficult legal burden for anyone to overcome. And this is not a regular case. It's a case with exceptional circumstances. The first issue is he didn't allocute. That's the first thing that always sticks out to me. It really bothered me that he didn't allocute, and that caused a lot of problems.
Same.
Because that's supposed to happen. But let's take a step back and ask ourselves what we don't know. Who was the NBC Dateline leak? Wasn't me.
Correct.
It wasn't. The Ada County Sheriff's Department's investigating Ann Taylor's office. That would have been, and the special master who would do the investigation knew before the plea who it was, and they put that on file and they sealed it. Bryan Kohberger doesn't know who that leak was. It didn't help him. It hurt him badly. So he should know. If Ann Taylor knows, and she definitely knows, she would have to know because she's part of that sealed material. She would have to have reviewed it. She certainly didn't pass that along to Kohberger. So that's a problem. That's the first little hurdle there that's going to contextualize why he wasn't looped in and why he was coerced into taking this deal and why he was told to lie, why he was told to perjure himself.
So is he there tying in potentially the plea deal to that investigation into the leak?
I think he's saying it is vastly important to it. And yeah, I think on some level he's doing exactly what you're saying. And I think he's saying, well, Anne knew who the leak was and it was sealed and her defense team knew. And if they knew that before they did the 18-hour, let's go in the room and talk about changing the plea, I think that's something incredibly important that a defendant should know, because that leak was detrimental to Brent.
100% agree with you.
Attorneys have a duty of candor to their clients. If there's anything material regarding their case, they're supposed to share that with their client. I mean, you don't withhold material information from your client, whether you're a criminal defense attorney or a family law attorney. You don't do that.
Yeah, and I think this is absolutely material to the case, because Brian probably hasn't even seen the Dateline. He probably hasn't even seen the Dateline leak, but it was someone close and knew who it was. I'm sure that the whole rest of the defense team, if not more people, knew. And I think that even goes beyond candor. I think that the fact that they did not tell him that is grotesque. I'm going to steal Turvey's word and use it right back.
Why would Ann Taylor not tell Brian who the leak is if she knows? All right.
I just want to say Team Turvey. I just want to say Team Turvey. We're going to have a friend of ours is going to help us out with some new merch. And that's one of the first ones we're going to make. # Team Turvey. And then, I think another friend of mine always says Turvey sub. So we'll do a hashtag for that too. But I really hope people, instead of rushing to jump and minimize Dr. Turvey and behind their computer screen or on their phone or say he's a liar. I can only imagine all the TikTokers that won't even watch this whole video, that'll go throw a clip up. This is an incredibly powerful interview, and the gloves are off, in my opinion, with this interview.
And it's not over.
It's the real work is just beginning.
And again, this is something that people do all the time under the stress and duress of a defense attorney telling them, I'm not taking this to trial. For what is it, like a third, 20, 29, 30% of all of the people who are exonerated by the Innocence Project basically confessed and took a plea deal at the urgence of their defense attorney because they were frightened they were going to lose at trial. That's a third. That's not a joke. That's something we have to think about how our legal system works. The next thing is that if this, I really appreciate that Judge Hippler appeared on paper, at least, to be taking this seriously by accepting the filing and then appointing him a new attorney. I don't know. It concerns me that it's a small town attorney that's got a 1-star rating. It concerns me a bit who the attorney is, but maybe he's better than we know, and maybe he's got death experience that we don't know about. So that's the next part. It's not just about the legal hurdles, it's about the competence and quality of your representation, right? But the other thing is that it's a pro forma, it's the next step that has to happen in the process. You've done this before, I'm certain. And I don't know whether you ever worked with Innocence Networks before, but I have through my entire career. In fact, I have working with the Innocence Project. My first big case, high profile case, was the West Memphis case. And I worked directly with the Innocence Project out of Cardozo Law in that case. And the process and the metrics and the intake ability of a Innocence Project is dependent upon all the other appeals being denied or completed, those processes completed. So in terms of it being a stepping stone towards other legal avenues, you have to knock them down one at a time, right? One thing at a time. You can't just skip to the end, right? So right. I see it as a big legal hurdle. I fear that Ann Taylor is going to be in a lot more trouble than she thinks, because the communications that she had with everyone are documented. They're all documented. So all that stuff is going to come out. She no longer holds the privilege, Koberger does. And if he gets his day in court, a hearing, which I worry that he won't, then all that stuff could come in. All those communications with family members and Koberger himself, which he would want to have come out about the.
I think I'm growing more of the belief that he's going to get to a hearing. Now, it's still possible. What the judge can do, Idaho, they have a summary stage where the judge will look at all of the pleading there. I expect there will be an amended pleading. Let's look at September 3rd is probably the date that would be filed by. I don't know that it has to, but that's my guess. And so we'll probably get more evidence. Is there going to be a declaration by Turvey? Maybe. I don't know. I do expect there will be, based on what Dr. Turvey's saying, there's going to be declarations of family members.
Anybody that was in that 18-hour meeting.
Yeah. But the judge has to look at, even if there's contradictory evidence, the judge has to look, when he's looking at that stage in determining whether there's going to be a hearing, is there any evidence, if believed, that would justify setting aside this plea? So there is a step between now and a hearing. I'm becoming more and more convinced that there is going to be a hearing. I think there has to be, based on what's coming out, especially this stuff that Turvey's talking about.
So Ron, I have a question genuinely. When they do this PCR hearing that you're referring to, will there be testimony? Will there be witnesses? Will there be cross-examination? So it's not like a hearing that we do pre-trial, pendente lite, which is just kind of mostly argument, points and authorities, case law. There will be witnesses.
Yeah, there will be witnesses. I mean, anytime there's an evidentiary hearing, that means witnesses are going to testify and they're going to be cross-examined and everything, because that's what the evidence is, testimony of witnesses. Now these witnesses will potentially lay foundation for documents to come in, but there have to be specific reasons to get that. The basic evidence in any trial is witness testimony. And this will require an evidentiary hearing with testimony. Yeah. All right.
The nature and extent of the coercion to him and his family by the attorney team. Right? We're not living in the old days where it's somebody's word. We don't take people at their word anymore because we can't. We have digital evidence we can use, text messages, video calls, video chats. The very evidence that we collected, we should have all collected in this case and disclosed initially, which took years to disclose, is the very evidence that would be presented in this court, in this type of hearing. So I'm not as pessimistic as you are, but I am realistic, which is I know what the hurdles are. And as you said, Mr. Koberger is not an idiot either. So for him to put this on the table tells me that he's ready to go. And I don't think that his legal team is prepared for what he's going to present.
Well, and I think to your point about if we just start back with the original Dateline leak, I mean, if that comes back, that came from his own lawyers, I mean, right there, you put him in a position where he was never
or one of his
defended
experts
properly.
at the direction of the attorney, right? And not just the attorney team, but also you got 3 attorneys and their assistants, and then you've also got, kind of a rogue defense expert right now going out there saying contrary things,
Really? A rogue defense expert out there? Who could he be talking about?
I don't know who went rogue. No, they went more than rogue. They went more than rogue. I still can't process what.
I'm only going to say that.
Hold on. DJ Frankie, I'll already put $10 in there for today. I was gonna say it, but we have a lot of people in here, so I'll behave. But yeah, I will wait, if we split it, okay, all right, we'll split it. That's a fair deal.
This is a great question.
Oh, how do we rectify all this with Cyray's statement that Brian had an inappropriate relationship with Ann Taylor?
Well, especially since they haven't seen each other in a year.
Thank you for the super chat.
Yeah, we got so many comments about that, and you guys are so smart. That was absolutely brilliant. But yes, how?
Well, I don't know what to believe from Cyril at this point. And it seems to me that he is willing to say things that at least are not supported by evidence that I've seen. He's willing to say things that are speculative. After listening, in the little time we had between when this aired and our show, I did a little poking around because he's, following Dr. Turvey's finger that he's pointing here.
Wait, Ron, are you gonna give a big bomb right now?
No.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
We'll do that at the end.
Well, yeah, that's no. Oh, no. I'm probably what you're thinking.
All right, go ahead and do it now, because this blew me away. So I think
because because he's so obviously pointing at Cyril. I don't have an opinion of this. I don't know. I'm not making an accusation. We're just asking questions. We're just following this. I do know that Cyril has himself indicated he has been on Dateline before. He's been on 2020. He's been on a lot of other shows. It does appear that at least one of the producers for the show that the Koberger, they're talking about the Dateline where the leak came out, that producer has been around for a number of years, including during the time that Cyril has been on. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I know of at least one episode he was on in 2016. I think he has been on at least one more since then. But I haven't been able to confirm that yet. But I look then at, and I have some notes on this. I looked then at the stuff that was leaked. For instance, NBC, they said they had never before reported video, photographic, and digital materials. Video and digital. Hippler later specifically identified previously unreported internet search history and other confidential information. That led me back to the Brian Enton interview with Cyril, where he talked about internet search history and things that he found disturbing that he was convinced would lead a jury to come up with a verdict, a guilty verdict. And they specifically did that. Cy says Brian had a very disturbing porn history. That's exactly what they were saying, what some of the material was in the Dateline thing. Cyril was hired by the defense, I think, in October of 2023. And this Dateline report came out in 2025. So he was definitely part of the team and would have had access to this information. So it could very well be that Cy is just sharing some of this information that was part of what was leaked. I'm not saying Cy is the leak. I'm just pointing out some interesting parallels here. He talked about, but I just thought it was really interesting. Some of the things that he's been talking about that point to Brian's guilt, that lead him to believe Brian's guilty, are very similar to what was included in that Dateline leak. And that included in the Dateline leak were cell tower stuff regarding his location, which I know we talked about with Cyril. So I'm just trying to ask myself, why is Turvey potentially looking in that direction? We don't know. We don't know who was the leak. We don't know. There's only speculation, and I'm just trying to follow Turvey's point of view on this, on why he might be pointing in that direction. He says he knows one person who isn't the leak, and that would be him, because he would certainly know that. So that's, I think, kind of where I'm going. I don't know who else may have had relationships with Dateline producers, and I don't know whether that has anything to do with the leak. I'm just observing that there is a past relationship there.
Maybe an unhealthy relationship. I don't know.
No.
Sam, what do you think of that? The connections are definitely make me want to know more.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sam's taking the high road.
I don't know.
Sam's pleading the fifth. I know when Ron told us that before the show, I was like, because I've already had some of my own personal suspicions of who could be the leak, who could not be the leak, and obviously it changes all the time. But Hippler knows who the leak is. It sounds like a lot of people know who the leak is except Brian. We know that Anne and probably Bicca and the other attorney, I can't think of their name right now, but they all knew.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely knew. And I think it's really important to know who it was. It's, yeah, I think that makes a material difference in his case.
Yeah.
I think it makes a huge, if that documentary hadn't come out, I think Brian would have been in a far better position, because a lot of people that don't follow the case, oh, Dateline came out with this new bomb. Right now you go on Netflix, the Idaho 4 documentary that just dropped, which is full of either information that's super important left out or just inconsistencies. But look, it's number 1. Oh, I'm going to go through the top 10 on the playlist and I'm going to watch this. And then it's like, oh, wait, that mother effer really did do this, without knowing or analyzing the whole other side of this case.
Yeah. No, I agree. I totally agree.
Yep. All right.
Any other bombs there, Ron?
Other bombs there.
So you can clearly tell that we don't control Ron, because he goes rogue too. But he always comes back with some bombs, which we appreciate.
I was just kind of following where Turvey seems to be pointing us, and I was, a little surprised to see some of the parallels there. Again, they very well could just be coincidental, and it could just be part of the Cy was very aware of whatever information the defense had that he thought, that at least Cy thought was detrimental. Turvey doesn't seem to share any of those opinions, by the way. But it's also interesting that the information that Dateline was sharing included cell phone records, cell phone location, and references to disturbing search history, things that we talked about with Cy and that he talked about with Brian Enton. So maybe Cy knows who the leak is as well.
Yeah, would not doubt that. How long before? Let's take a bet. How long before Brian Enton comes out with an interview to counteract or try to minimize this interview that just came out?
Yeah.
Tomorrow morning, by tonight. Wait for it. You want to keep playing, Ron? Keep playing the.
Okay.
And so we don't know. We all we know is police think it came from the defense, and I know who it wasn't.
If that's the case, I mean, that is just, crazy. Now let's talk about the evidence that they do believe, right, that they had against Kohberger from this whole time. And I know we talked about it last time you were on. I know it's part of Christopher Whitcomb's Broken Plea book, but talk to me again about, they basically found Brian Kohberger based on the DNA that they got from the IgG DNA testing on the knife sheath. And I know that part of the big contention here is that knife sheath, the chain of custody wasn't proper, where it was found versus where it was in photos, all of those things. So talk to us again about really, because that really was the only piece of evidence they had other than the description of a vehicle, right? They didn't really have anything else. So that's what led them to Brian Kohberger. So talk to me again about that, and then what the issues were with that chain of custody, because I think it's important for people to remember that while they're listening today.
All right. So 2 things. One is that we don't know, as I'm sitting here today, I cannot confirm to you by any forensic metric or by any judicial testimony or any unsworn testimony, anything like that. I cannot attest to you that I know for sure how Brian Koberger became a suspect. What I do know is at every opportunity, there was deflection, there was dissembling, and there was withholding by law enforcement about how that exactly happened. At one point, you have a probable cause statement saying it was from an informant. And then at one point, it's the IGG. And then you have the experts in DNA being fired on both sides. I mean, it's just like nobody was getting the answers that they wanted and people were getting terminated. It's one of the weirdest cases ever. This was an issue that should have been resolved with testimony under oath and documentation provided by the state. They have yet to provide that clearly, in my opinion. So I cannot tell you that.
Yeah.
And the fact that I can't tell you that should tell you that they're still, faffing about it to try to create, they're searching for a narrative still, I think.
And in terms of what you were able to review, do you know if you were given access
Ron, you didn't stop
to
that after
all of the
nearly
evidence,
4
or were you
years. After nearly 4 years, someone's facing the death penalty and we don't even know how they became a suspect.
That is crazy.
Is that not crazy? Like the craziest thing you've ever heard? And we've had other people on. I can tell you another expert was very adamant. This was how they got it. This was the date. And it was, through the IGG. But we're putting someone up, if they're lucky, to face the death penalty, or they're spending the rest of their life plus some in prison. And the biggest expert on this case doesn't know how they even got his name.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I wonder if someone who knows the documents a little more closely, or if someone wants to try to research that with what's being revealed. I mean, is it in a report somewhere? I think I remember when I saw the Franks hearing that there was some indication that we know it came to Moscow PD from the FBI as a tip only. We know that came
Allegedly, yeah, allegedly.
I remember thinking, I wasn't certain because I had heard, like he said, that they had identified his car through some communication with Washington State. But then again, how many white Elantras or similar cars are there in that area? It used to be, back when I was younger, there were all sorts of colors of cars. You'd see a lot of yellow and green and blue and everything. Now everything's white or silver, gray, and black. So there's going to be a lot of small white cars around. I don't, and I know I've asked people involved in this. I don't remember exactly who, but do we know what cars other of the frat brothers or other people living there had? I don't think we even know that, which is shocking to me.
There's a lot of white cars. There's a lot of white cars. But I mean, just like as we're sitting here today.
One right now out my window. There's one car in my view. It's a small white car. Kind of like a Hyundai Elantra.
Exactly what the model and the make is?
No. Let me see.
It's just interesting that sitting here today, literally 4 years later, we've heard about the tip, we've heard about the IGG, we've heard other theories, but we have one of the biggest criminologists in the world sitting here saying, I can't tell you how they even got his name.
So I agree with you.
Just
right?
I think that's the really important point he's making is he doesn't even know. And why is this still a question this long later?
Yeah. Just to update, I see 6 cars outside my window. 3 of them are white. I'm just saying.
Well, you can always tell which one is mine because I'm usually parked half on the curb on accident.
I'm in a different city.
Terrible driver.
I am a terrible driver.
I am too. I am a terrible driver.
Sam's a terrible driver, but like in the slow lane. I'm just a terrible driver because I drive too fast and I think that I can always make a turn and
I'm just hanging out. Driving's not my strong
suit.
But yeah, Kristen's she's gonna hit a curve on her way out.
She calls it a duck boat because I literally do just drive over shit.
Yeah.
Definitely not one of my strengths.
Yeah. All right.
And thank you, Hot Girl Bummer. That means a lot. Thank you. Thank you. And I
Given
think
access to certain pieces
Outcast,
of
you're
evidence.
here. Don't you? Outcast has all the car information, or that's usually who I go to get all the car information. So if you're not subscribed to his channel, you should. But he has a lot of the information of what cars were where and what is the make or the model or that information.
Okay, I just want to say, don't believe everything Motherfunker may say about my driving, please. It's subjective.
She's got a lot of credibility, Ron.
What is your driving, Ron? Is it terrible too?
Understand
Join the
it's
club.
subjective.
See, at least I'm accountable. I say it's terrible,
Yeah. Terrible.
but I spend a lot of time driving. So, you got to make some fast and quick decisions there.
I don't have to say mine is terrible. It's already said for me.
Yeah.
All right. I've never caused an accident. I'll say
Right.
that.
But you're also not the driver in your family.
She does drive when she even drives. She drives my car too. Mostly because she claims
so good.
my driving makes her car sick.
Ron, you're a bad driver, okay? There's too much evidence.
We're
out
all
there.
bad drivers.
You're too defensive.
All
Okay.
right, so no one's hiring us to drive them around. All right, let's go back to the interview. We would make terrible Uber drivers. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
How do you know that what Ann Taylor allowed you to look at was actually everything she had?
I'm smiling because I really love this question from prosecutors or attorneys when I'm on the stand. So did you look at everything? And the answer to that, there's only one answer to that is, how can I possibly know the answer to that?
Well,
I couldn't know if I've seen everything.
But
I can tell you this. Ann Taylor gave experts like myself access to a OneDrive on Google Drive that was called Expert One or whatever. And anytime you wanted to access it, you had to log in, put in the password. That would send her an email, and she would send you a text message with a verification code. Okay, so pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And I have a problem with any of that. What I do know is I thought I was given, I asked for certain things. I make a list of things that I asked for. It's a pro forma list I asked for in every case. And so I do that. And then we go to Idaho to do the evidence viewing, which I do in almost every case that I can. I do an evidence viewing to see what they got, to check change of custody, to check, like I was just in a case in Washington. It was a double homicide. And I had an item, and no fault of anybody. This was just an innocent mistake. Somebody collected an item and it said stun gun on it, right? I open up the bag. It's a flashlight, not a stun gun. There's no stun gun in there. Okay. This was just a mistake. Okay. And I wouldn't, it will get mentioned, but it's not, there isn't a lot of other mistakes around that. Do you know what I mean? So it was an error.
got it. Yeah, of course.
Somebody thought it was a stun gun and that's how they labeled it. And, they got a new system. They're working on this particular location. It's all, I'm not out for blood. I just want to know what happened. In this case, I went there.
Sure.
And there were two sets of evidence. One is the evidence that the law enforcement collected. And it was the mattress from Ethan and the knife sheath that was collected. Both of them have falsified change of custody. Both of them, it's not just a knife sheath, it's a couple other things. And many of the other items have correct change of custody on them with multiple people signing them. So we know that they know how to do it correctly. And it's not improper, it's illegal. It's a falsification of evidence. It's actually tampering with evidence. That would be the charge. And also,
Okay. And I say this because I do believe he said that we can say this. We had a conversation with him. It was actually a Zoom, and he showed us some photos, and he showed them because he wanted us to be able to say that we saw them. We did see another item of evidence that had the similar chain of custody that was all written by one person. I think there were 3 lines on that one. So everybody knows about that he's challenging the knife sheath chain of custody. There is another item of evidence that we saw that he showed us that has the same thing where the same person wrote on all 3 lines. And I don't remember what that was. Was that hair or was I know he told us.
What was in the bag?
Yeah.
I can't remember, but the pictures that he showed us had already been, I think that one of the pictures he showed us was already on Reddit. So he's really careful about not showing anything to us that hasn't been released.
Right.
But yeah, I think it was on Reddit. I think it's been circulating probably on TikTok too. But it was a picture I hadn't seen. So I don't know if it was released and then it got taken back when they've done a couple of those dumps and realized, hey, we shouldn't release that. Let's take them back. And then a lot of people actually downloaded them. But what he was trying to show us, it was a bag about yay big. And it was a brown, almost looked like a paper bag that was kind of, twisted and then had some sort of closure on it. And yeah, Ron was right. It literally had 3 names and it was all in the same handwriting. And he did make the statement that I'm not going to tell you that every piece of evidence had a chain of custody issue, but the sheath wasn't the only one. Again, did Brian know? Again, did Ann Taylor do anything with that specific piece of evidence? I'm not entirely sure. I have to look into that. But again, we're starting to see a pattern with respect to how the evidence was handled.
Yeah. And I think he showed us, because we can confirm I saw it with my eyes. It looked just like the one on the knife sheath.
Yep.
So there are more.
Except I don't even think this one
just
had
the
a
knife
barcode.
sheath. And in fact, that's what he said he was doing at the week leading up to the plea, is he had discovered that on the knife sheath, and he told Ann, we got to look at the chain of custody on everything. And so he was starting to find that and starting to find other problems with chain of custody on other evidence.
So 4 days between him finding out the chain of custody regarding the sheath had some very serious issues and errors. Then he spent the next 3 days after he had told Ann that they needed to start from the beginning and go back through everything. And I think he says in this interview, the investigators do a lot of the work and then he takes it from a certain point, but he went back to the beginning. What do you know? He finds something else. And between that 4-day period, we have a change of plea.
Mm-hmm.
Also false swearing. You can't lie. It's a sworn document that you're filling out. So it's not like
yeah, of course.
Oops, I slipped and fell and filled it out for everybody wrong. No. That's not what happened. How did I know whether or not I had received everything from Ann Taylor? I can tell you that I didn't, because when I got to the bed frame that Ann Taylor's team had forced the police to collect before they destroyed the house, along with many other bloody items that the police did not want to check, did not want to collect, I found the hair on it, in this item. I'm like, what is going on here? This is looks like a palm print on the side, and then there's all this hair there. Whose is this? And I look at it, it's Ethan's, the bed frame. It's white with wooden slats. And I'm like, what's this? And they're like, oh, that's the hair. Don't worry about that. We'll talk to you about that later. So we go back and we talk about it later, and they disclosed to me new autopsy photos that they hadn't given to me before. And other photographs that they'd taken of that, defense photographs that they had taken of the house before it was demolished, that they had not given to me. So they were playing their cards very close to the vest in terms of sharing material, even with me, which I found to be, I let them know that was not okay. You got to share with me everything, because I anticipate being on stand.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm going to get this question from a very smart prosecutor named Donna, who's going to ask me, how do you know you've seen everything? And I'm going to have to throw you under the bus, and I'll do it.
That's right. That's right. Say, sorry, I don't know that answer. They filed so many pretrial motions here. There was a lot of pretrial litigation in this case. And I don't remember any pretrial litigation dealing with chains of custody and whether or not certain items should be used, right? I think they did do it on the knife sheath, right? But I don't know if they did it on anything else.
They didn't know until like a month. No, it was like maybe a few weeks before the plea, because it got brought, one of the investigators brought a question to my attention, which led us down this rabbit hole. And I'm like, oh my God, you're right. Because I don't think like that. I don't think that people are lying. But I also think as a scientist, which is that if I see something wrong in one spot, I know I got to look in the other spots too. I can't just now accept it without question. So you're always supposed to be checking change of custody. And I'd love to take credit for finding everything, but I didn't. I'm the forensic scientist though. So if an investigator brings me a piece of evidence and asks me about it, then I give my opinion, then that becomes evidence. And then it causes us to look at other things, and the change of custody were all falsified on those as well.
I mean, that would have been an amazing pretrial motion, because then you put that out there, you show the weakness, and then you put the police officers on the stand and they have to answer to this. And, I'm still trying cases. I did a jury last week and I had a police officer admit to me that yes, evidence helps. Well, gee, go figure. Yes, it does. And so it's amazing. Yeah, it was such an amazing answer. And so, I look at this and I think to myself, these are defense dreams, right? These types of motions, to be able to put this out there and possibly not only cut through evidence, but if you cut through enough evidence that the prosecution can't use, and if a judge tosses it out, or even if the judge doesn't toss it out, you're preserving all these rights on appeal. It just is amazing to me that, given all the other work that they did, and maybe you're right, maybe this comes down to the fact that she realized she was going to have some issues with regard to these leaks, and thought, we better get out of this case as quickly as we can. And if that's the case, that is an injustice to everyone in this case, not only Brian Koberger, but everyone.
I couldn't agree anymore. I mean, if
Neither.
that's
It's a
the
true
motivation
statement.
for encouraging, I say, him to take the plea, absolutely, that's disturbing to me.
It's an absolute injustice to everybody involved.
Yeah.
Including the taxpayers,
And including the victims' families.
the victims' families, Brian's family, Brian himself, anyone like you and I and the other 1,100 people in here. How many hours have we all, devoted to this and to finding out the truth? But I really hope that's not the case. But I know that we've had conversations about this possibility for a while.
I will submit to you that the misconduct goes further than just Ann Taylor. It goes to Becca Barlow, it goes to the other attorney, and it goes to their forensic psychologist, who was behaving in a way that is completely improper. And certainly that was my experience with her, but also was the experience of Mr. Koberger. She was there, instead of in her role as an evaluator, she was doing all kinds of other things that she shouldn't be doing. And I've worked so many death penalty cases. The lines are so very clear about what your role is, what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do, the types of communication that you have, difference between treatment and diagnosis, which is a therapeutic position, and then assessment of mental faculty for a forensic assessment, a forensic position. These two areas are in conflict, and you can't have the same person doing both. And so in this case, it was the lines were so blurred for everybody, myself not included, because I've done this so many times. I protect myself very carefully because I anticipate testimony and I anticipate having to answer questions under oath. And I alone can be held accountable, whereas somebody who's not going to testify, or a lawyer, will not be held to account the same way. So I agree with you. It's a travesty, but I think what I think people need to understand from this is that it is far worse than most people understand. The conduct that was engaged in by the defense team, the conduct that was engaged in by the person who made the leak, depending on who that is, the lack of transparency of the defense team to Mr. Koberger, and all the other allegations of being coerced. I mean, he's not going to make that allegation unless he has the evidence. And if she's communicating with him over text messages, well, guess what?
Right, exactly.
Hold on, Ron. Did you see how he pointed almost all the fingers at the defense team? Right there?
Yeah.
It was almost
Yeah.
all at the defense team.
Yeah, I remember when he talked to us that we were kind of a little wide-eyed about some of the things that he was willing to say about Ann Taylor and the defense. He's gone way beyond that at this point. I mean, this is he definitely sees this as a huge, huge problem. And if it's all as he describes, then I haven't seen anything to suggest to me that Dr. Turvey doesn't look at things objectively. This is going to, people are going to be shocked. I mean, you guys don't need me to drop any bombs in here when Turvey's dropping bombs like this about the defense team.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know what the bombs are with respect to the prosecution and the discovery and the missing evidence or the destruction of evidence and all of their BS that we all know. But for him to come at the defense team so harshly. And he's not someone who does anything for clicks or views. I mean, I think he has a TikTok where he puts out some really good stuff, but Turvey is a man that credibility and truth and honesty. I mean, he says how many times in this interview that it's very clear what our obligations and what the lines are. He does not live in a gray area. He lives in black or white. Like, this is not a man who's going to tell you something to make you feel better at the end of the day. And the way he puts that out there, I had to watch it like 3 or 4 times. I was like, whoa.
And something that just came up, he has a prior professional relationship with Becca Barlow.
Yeah, she actually was the friend that brought him on this case.
Yeah. So for him
Or they had
to
worked together.
for him to point a finger at her is stunning.
Agree.
And the real travesty, you know, beyond, you know, obviously locking up somebody if you don't have the proof, but the real travesty too is if let's say that the judge says, you know what, Mr. Koberger, we're going to let you withdraw your plea. We're going to start this over from the beginning. I mean, the expense alone to the taxpayer to have to do this again would be horrible. I mean, lawyers take oaths. And if you can't trust that your own lawyer is going to do what's best for you, or at least put you in a position where you make the decision, right? Here's all the evidence. Here's Dr. Turvey's report. Here's everybody else's findings. Here's what we've discovered. And at the end of the day, they're offering to take the death penalty off the table. Do you want it or not based on the evidence? That's one thing, right? And there's a lot of people who I think should go to trial that sometimes don't because they don't want to take the risk. And that's a decision that clients make. But that is completely different than being put in a position where you're not told about pieces of evidence, or you're not told about strength of evidence, or you're not told about the way experts view evidence. That's a completely separate conversation.
Yes. So to your first point, let's talk about the money, because that's been covered a lot. And I think it's important for people to understand that the death penalty is expensive. It's one of the reasons why many states stopped doing it, because when you are working a case and you're working now, let me give you full disclosure. My contract was for about 25 grand. That's about $10,000 more than I normally make on a given case. All right. And that's disclosing a lot, because most experts don't like to talk about money. If I worked only for the prosecution, I'd be able to charge between $150,000 and $200,000 per case. I don't do that. I work for either side. The money is not what's important to me. Most of the money is not going to have a lot of money will be spent by the defense, but most of the money will be spent by the state, all right, to try to make their case. I have not seen cases spend this much money in a long time, and this much money for so little result. The money shouldn't even be the conversation. The conversation should be, how did we spend this much money and we still don't have answers from the prosecution, or we have overstated, overcompetent evidence? And I can tell you it's because they basically, handed the investigation and the forensics over to the FBI and let them do it. And just kind of like, well, we don't really know anything about that. We'll let you do it. And the FBI were overconfident and wrote reports that said one thing and then had to testify in a way that reduced their confidence about the car, about the DNA, about how people were found, about the cell tower stuff. I mean, it's all just too disgusting. Again, it's disgusting for me to spend this amount of money and not have straight answers from anybody on the state side. Everybody having to reduce themselves. They took this very 100% posture of guilt, and then you get them under oath, and all of a sudden it's 70%, maybe 80%. I don't know. So there is the money issue. Yeah, but the money issue, when you are morally certain that the death penalty is the right thing for your state, it's going to cost you, because we do not put people to death in this country when we think that they might be innocent. All right. That's a rule. Sure. I mean, we don't kill innocent people, right? We can agree with that. I hope we don't want to kill innocent people. So in the search for truth, resources will be expended, not just money, but time and effort and emotions and all that good stuff. So that's the first thing. What I would expect is if Hippner says, I'm going to grant it for you, let's start over. Great. Let's get a real death qualified attorney that actually has experience working in death penalty trials. Not somebody who's a dealer who knows how to make a plea and has maybe worked a couple cases. I mean, somebody who actually knows what they're doing. Because this is a case where now everybody's sort of on the line. The second thing is, if anybody, anybody on the side of the state or the defense has engaged in misconduct, they have opened themselves up to litigation and lawsuits. I worked on a case in in Connecticut. What was it? Versus Birch and Henning, the Birch and Henning case. These were, it was a home invasion where the only evidence in the case was DNA from blood alleged to have been found on a towel. That was the only evidence, all right, in the whole case. And I did the examination of that evidence in the case, and I found that the expert in that case had falsified that item. And that case went all the way to the Supreme Court of Connecticut. That expert was Henry Lee, my mentor. Now, what happened?
Wow.
He got sued personally, and he got sued to the tune of $30 million, and he lost. He refused to show up to defend himself. He knew what he had done. He had dry labbed this result for the police. There was a bunch of other cases that were going on at the same time where the same allegations were being made. But this was back in 2011. So when experts lie, there should be consequences. And in many states, there are.
Sure,
When
just
lawyers
like police
lie
or
for
anybody. Yes,
foreign perjury,
absolutely.
there should be consequences. And that's a separate conversation. What I'm concerned about is people have already kind of decided, well, he's guilty, so he's done. He already said he was guilty. Again, 1/3 of defendants who are investigated by the Innocence Project or are found to have been wrongfully convicted, 1/3 of them were coerced by their defense attorneys. This is a common concept. I am so grateful to you as an attorney, as a criminal justice professional, that you and I can meet, regardless of the side that we take, on this very even plane of, hey, we don't do that. We let the client decide.
Right.
You give them my job is to educate attorneys educate the client, and my job then becomes maybe educate the court, maybe educate the jury, but ultimately there's a trier of fact that's going to come in and make a decision. And we want them to have the best and fullest and most complete set of information that exists. You and I can agree on that without getting mad at each other. That's not the world we live in right now.
Absolutely.
Nobody wants anybody to have a fair shake. Nobody wants anybody to the truth to come out. People decide who the monsters are, and then they go down that road instead of doing the investigation.
It's interesting you say that, because just this last week I did a jury and it was an attempted murder case, and the client had another lawyer the first 7 years that his case was pending. And we came in, and I think in about 8 months decided to take the case to trial. And this guy was trying to push this guy to take a deal every which way from Sunday. And we came in and I talked to him about that deal, and I talked to him about why it was less of a risk, because it was much less time than he would serve if he lost. But at the end of the day, he has a right to have his day in court. And we tried that case, and that came back in about 4.5 hours with a not guilty. So, you have to be able to, and for clients that say, I did not do this, I am actually innocent, and I want to have my day in court, then they're willing to take a risk.
That's exactly.
Yeah, that's the proper perspective to have for a criminal defense attorney when you're dealing with plea deals and stuff like that. I mean,
agree.
she knows, we know.
Mhm.
Why doesn't
The
Antioch?
fact that he was willing to sell out his mentor or disclose the truth about what his mentor had done, that
Yeah.
anybody questioning his authenticity or his credibility or his honesty, I mean, that says everything. That says who he is.
Yeah.
And wasn't there's a recent CSI, or I can't remember exactly what their title was, but they were fudging DNA and they were manipulating it, modifying it, and it affected a very significant amount of cases that had just come out a couple weeks ago. And I think she's
Yeah, I think
facing some pretty significant charges. I want to say she worked for the FBI, but I'm not entirely sure. But she had been manipulating DNA findings for over a decade, and she got caught.
I also think it's an important note that he really needs an experienced attorney in a death penalty trial case.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly
Yep.
right. If you have somebody who's guilty and they get a good plea deal, they're going to take it, right? And that's the problem.
Yeah.
That sets up a stereotype. And if you apply that stereotype or that caricature of a defendant to Brian Koberger, you're going to miss all the important information and facts and details underneath the surface that are going on that he has not been talking about. Like I said, he's been a good client as far as I can tell, by virtue of doing what he was told, as well as his family, and keeping their mouths shut.
Talk to me a little bit about the hair that was found in Ethan Chapin's hand. I know we talked about this originally. This is something that's gotten a lot of communication online and otherwise, and that the hair did not match Brian Koberger's, but there's some inconclusive facts out there. And again, because the prosecutors really didn't answer and because Koberger didn't really allocute, there's still a lot of questions surrounding that hair. The police are saying it was tested, it wasn't Koberger's, that it was Chapin's himself. Now, is that true, or do we have no idea who that hair belongs to?
Nobody who's under oath is saying that, and no report says that it belongs to Ethan. That is where our world exists. So anybody who's saying these is guessing. They're saying maybe it's him, maybe it's not. Just like Ann Taylor and her team said, what if they asked me, what if it belongs to somebody in the house? I'm like, well, maybe it does. We need to find out who that is and how it got in his hand, right? Because
do you hear, Ron, do you hear he said,
well, let's talk about what does exist, okay? The hair, first, my
Did you hear that part? They, the defense team, Ann Taylor and her team, they asked him, what if this is, what did they exactly ask him? What if this was someone else's, or? But the fact they're running to him and saying, what if,
you know,
they clearly knew the hair was there and that it was a big issue. Hey, what should we do with this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you rewind it just 10 seconds so I can hear exactly what his response was?
They're saying maybe it's him, maybe it's not. Just like Ann Taylor and her team said, what if they asked me, what if it belongs to somebody in the house? I'm like, well, maybe it does. We need to find out who that is and how it got in his hand, right? Because that would wreck the timeline. Well, let's talk about what does exist, okay? The hair, my first encounter was the hair on the bed frame. And it was like probably 20, 30 strands, about that long, coming off the bed frame, attached in blood on the bed frame with Ethan's in the
That's a lot.
imprint of
I mean,
Ethan's
20,
hand.
30 strands, that's a lot. Yeah.
It's way more than that. Okay, so but that's what I could see. I can show you the pictures right now if you want to. But the pictures of the hair on the bed frame and that are also attached to the wall is even more. There's even a bigger clump from what's on the bed frame attached to the wall. When they pulled it away, there's a nice little streak of blood. When they pulled it away, there's hair attached to the wall and sealed to the wall with blood. And it's even more than that amount of hair. Then we have the hair that's in his hand, the phone was taken at the crime scene. Okay, so there's 3 different photos. So anybody who has not looked at all the evidence and who is speaking on issues that they don't know anything about because they're not a reconstructionist or not a forensic scientist, anybody who's saying that those hairs doesn't exist, it means that they haven't looked at the evidence and aren't aware of what's going on in the case. They viewed the case through their very narrow aperture. I did crime scene analysis and reconstruction, which means my hands were in everything. All right, so those photographs exist. And not only that, they were leaked online. There are people that have put these photographs online and put them into nice collages for everybody to see. So the first hurdle to clear is, do they exist? Yes. Then when the police wrote a report about it, it was described in the autopsy report and the police reports as debris in his hands. There was no debris in his hands. It was just human hair, right? A clump of it in his hands, then some stuck to the bed frame and then some stuck to the wall. That hair was of such significance that they sent it off to the FBI lab, who looked at it under a microscope and said, these hairs do not share similar characteristics. Therefore, there's no DNA testing needs to be done. And Brian Koberger is excluded. These are the facts. These are not Brent Turvey's speculations. This is what exists on the record. Now, have you heard anything about that? Other than through me? No. No one wants to talk about it. Why? Because it would upend the case. It would upend everything. It would change everything we think about the timeline, the narrative, the interaction, who was in what room. But there's other evidence. There's down in the first floor bedroom, we have the jacket that didn't get collected or tested properly. We have a bloody bracelet that was on the floor that got picked up and moved by police and put on one of the desks and ignored and not collected. We have many different items of evidence like that weren't exactly examined or considered in the timeline because they got lost or forgotten or just plain ignored because they didn't fit the narrative. I come back to the same thing every time. When you want to know what happened, you examine the evidence. When you want to know what the truth is, you pursue that evidence to find out whose it is, how it got there, conditions of transfer, and what that means for the entirety of the reconstruction of the case. There's not a real interest in doing that. In fact, they were so disinterested in doing that that they demolished the house. I never even heard of that before, where you
Yeah.
demolish the house.
I
So
know, me
that's-
neither.
And
Yeah.
then they created
ahead.
this 3D model of it that I went out again to examine and took my photographs and did a 3D scan of it. It doesn't even match the interior of the house. It's full of incorrect access, incorrect sizes. It says big sign there, not the scale. They wanted to use it as a trial exhibit. Didn't have anything in it. Didn't have anything to do with the case. Just an approximation of maybe what the house might have looked like inside. We're not sure.
I'm going to say that I feel like no matter which way you fall on this, right? Whether you think Brian Koberger did it, whether you think he didn't do it, no matter what you think, I think everyone that's paid attention to this case has always wanted to see a trial here, because a trial was either going to expose that there was or there wasn't enough evidence, and a trial could potentially answer the question why or how. And so no matter how you feel about this, no one got those answers. So I think it's going to be
Yeah.
really interesting to see what Judge Hippler does and see if we ever get those answers. But no matter what happens, I'm sure, Dr. Turvey, I will want to talk to you about it. So I hope you'll be back with me, and I thank you so much.
All right.
So that was a good
There's a
interview
lot.
to get the day going.
Yeah.
And there
Yeah,
is a
no,
lot
there-
in there. You
Yeah,
go,
so
Howard.
much.
We're
Sorry.
talking at the same time.
Oh, sorry. So much to unpack in just in that last bit too. I mean, with all the evidence that was just ignored, and it's ignored because it didn't fit their theory or their idea of what happened.
Yeah, I liked the interview. I liked Donna's questions, and I think that we want to see more of these interviews and more of the public just really realizing what's going on. And that's my hope with really the actions that Brian is taking right now. So we'll see.
Yeah, I agree. It's vastly different than the whole one strand of hair narrative, isn't it?
It certainly is also refreshing to listen to an attorney who is in the criminal field sort of have the same or similar sentiments to Turvey at all of these issues, right? Like, oh, I've never heard of that. Oh, that's unheard of. I mean, it's just not that Turvey needs any more credibility, but
Yeah.
it's just showing you how bizarre this case really has been.
No, I agree, because look at almost every other criminal attorney that at least is public and talking about this case is on the other side, and everything is just, oh my gosh, he did it. Why are we here? And
Yeah.
so I agree, Sam, that to have another attorney who's in the trenches doing criminal defense or really doing anything that understands litigation and trial work, it's refreshing. Because, I mean, how many times do the three of us think we're losing our mind, or, oh my gosh, did I get this right? I mean, we haven't even been able to look at the new documents that have just come out in the last couple of days. We haven't even gotten that far. That's on our to-do list next. We are working with Turvey to try to see if we can get him on at some point. He has to be careful with how much PR he does in any sense with interviews in light of what's going on. Ron, how long do you think it would be before we see a trial on this change of plea?
I would guess sometime next year.
I mean, the new attorney would have to have significant time to get up to speed, and I'm sure he would add to his defense team as well. There's no way one person can do this.
I really, really hope that Brian gets a good attorney.
Same. I'll make that my birthday wish this year. All right. Well,
Okay.
Ron, you got any other bombs, Ron?
No bombs. Not right now.
Sam, you want to go through our thank yous on our card, our super chats?
Thank you for the super chat. Psy interview, Netflix, BK, PCR, Brian Enton, and the G's. The pendulum swung wildly from guilty to not guilty. Your interview with CW brought equilibrium back to this case in seeking the truth. Thank you very much, DJ Frankie Fitz. That's very nice.
Yeah, thank you, Tammy Lynn. We have a couple from you. And anyone else that is sent, I think Outcast at a super chat. Anyone else? And we've had a whole bunch. I don't know why they're not all showing up here. Oh, AutoStar super chats. We're still learning this, guys, the whole back end thing. But thank you to everyone that donated to us. We really, 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 really appreciate it. And I think the hard work is just starting. So we appreciate you. I can't even look at Ron seriously with that crown on his head. I really can't. On his picture. But thank you for joining us today. We will be back soon. Hopefully we'll be able to do something else this week. If not, we will catch you early next week. But remember, be kind, and yeah, the hard work starts now. Everything we talked about today is our opinions, with some speculation, and you know, we always encourage everybody to go out and do their own due diligence, because at the end of the day, we don't know everything.
All right, everyone. Until next time, thanks for joining.
Thanks, guys.